Now, welcome back. You're listening to Midweek Voices. Joe Neal has been here many times. He's had 6 books of poetry published.
Yes.
The most recent came last week. It's called Rossetti's Wombat, and it was launched in the Wexford Library. Joe has come in to see me again. Of course, you're a regular in here, Joe, aren't you?
Yes, it looks like it.
Well, congratulations
very
on the book, and I'm fascinated by the title, Rossetti's Wombat.
Yes, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, the artist of Victorian times, had this strange habit of collecting exotic species of animal and keeping them in his house and garden in Chelsea and London. And he used to entertain his fellow artists and writers around the table. And he had this pet wombat, which he called Top. It was a young animal, because they grow to about, it's a marsupial from Australia, they grow to about half the size of a badger. This small animal was a young one, and he kept it amongst the pepper pots in the middle of the table while they were having dinner, just to entertain his guests. And it would be heavily drugged up with laudanum, which is an extract of opium. A lot of these artists used to drink it to get a high in those days, and it was also used as an anaesthetic. And so this wombat would be in the middle of the table, snoring away, and the guests would be laughing about it. And so I wrote this poem about it. It's a rather cruel habit that he had, and took the title of the book from that poem.
And have you been participating now in those particular parties? It would have been a long time ago, Joe, but...
No, I wouldn't have done, and I don't think, even though I would have been part of that society then, and we would have thought differently, I still don't believe that I would have thought it was a good thing to treat animals like that. And in fact, I'm not very much in favour of zoos for the same reason.
Now, you were born halfway up a mountain in North Wales, and you were also in the acting profession,
Yes.
and you were a journalist in the UK, and you ended up in Wexford as a poet.
Yes.
And you're enjoying it.
Indeed,
you're writing
yes.
a lot of poetry. I mean, this is number 6.
Well, I live in a place called Eden Vale, which is the rising side of a little wooded valley on the banks of the River Sal. And I think anyone who lives in a place like that can't help but have some imagination, which has to take flight in whatever, poetry in this case.
Now, you're an ideal person then to ask about the Wexford Poetry Circle. How impressed are you?
With
A few years back, we would only have had an odd poet now and again, but there's a fair amount of poetry now being produced by
Oh, yes, sure.
by talented people.
Yes, indeed, and we have. It's quite amazing how many writers have come out of Wexford. It's a little corner of Ireland where there is tremendous talent. I exclude myself here, but says he modestly. Yes, I suppose there's something about Wexford that causes people's imagination to take off, I suppose.
They're producing all these writers and short storytellers and poets and every class of talented people.
Yes. If I start listing people, I will leave someone out, so I'm not going to mention anyone in particular.
But you do participate in the local circle, Joe, don't you? You do readings and you
Yes, we
go to launches and things like that.
We used to have regular sessions in Wexford. There aren't any at the moment, but I think they're due to start up again. And those sessions did encourage a lot of talent to come into Wexford to read one night a month. And it's going to start up again, I think, soon.
Now, Rossetti's Wombat is your new book, and it's only launched. And you promised to read something for me.
Yes, thank you.
So what have you prepared?
Well, last year I was very fortunate to win an International Poetry Award. This is the poem that won it, and it's called Allegheny Man. Now, before I read it, I'd just like to say that sometimes if you visit a place, your imagination does funny things. I was in America, in the Allegheny Mountains, some while back, and I came upon this old cabin. It was a ruin halfway up a mountain. It's like a place where I was born.
It was like home.
Yes, like home. And there was an old rotting log with a rusty axe embedded in it. And outside this cabin, which was very broken down and the timbers had fallen away from it, outside this cabin was an old wheelchair. It looked as if it had been homemade. And This too was rotting. I spent about 2 hours just sitting in this place, thinking about who had once lived there. And this poem came out of it. It's called Allegheny Man. I knocked and heard a screech and a razzle clump across a wooden floor, and then I saw him in the open door, half in, half out, sitting in a chair he'd built to spare his wooden leg while waiting for repair. Bartle John his name, though no one knew from whence he came, a mountain man for sure, with bear to blame for brutal loss of limb. Whiz mechanic, so they said, who walked with miracles. He worked on bits of old machinery and strummed the blues on banjo made from shagbark hickory, with God knows what for strings, and twanged his itty-bitty trickiness, sometimes till moon had bled into the sun, and Allegheny hills had begun to run with colour of the day. Now he's gone, panning for the stars, but still they hear his music drifting in the wind, as curled leaves settle on his grotesque rotting chair, while salamanders crawl across the hanging door and tawny crescent butterflies flutter through the roof. They say old Bartle John sure could play and sing the saddest song about life's wrongs he saw so clearly through unmatched eyes of brown and blue, which understood alternate sides of neighbours' arguments. We never really met, yet in the ruins of his home I feel I know him well. His heavy presence lingers there like a pulsing shimmer in the air, while mockingbird and phoebe stay their song, creatures dumb in awe of spirit lore, listening for that moving chair to squeal across the hallowed ground, where Allegheny Man once ruled with sound.
Beautiful, John Neal. And while you were reading that there, I noticed from the foreword in your book that the award you won was the Anthony Cronin International Poetry Award.
Yes.
And Anthony Cronin, who's no longer with us, was born in Enniscorthy, and he was a
Yes.
famous Enniscorthy man. The writer started a long time ago in Wexford, didn't they?
Indeed, a long time ago. And Enniscorthy is a wonderful place. In fact, I'm reading there next week, on Thursday week, in Enniscorthy Library at 7 p.m.
And you want everyone to go along and
Of
enjoy
course,
it.
yes, as many as possible.
So how is the book doing? Did it get off to a good start? Had you a good launch?
Yes, unfortunately, the storm warning, I think we had an amber warning that night, and the storm didn't come until way after midnight, and it wasn't nearly as bad as we expected, but it did keep people away, so I didn't have as many people coming to the launch as I expected.
Well, my invitation didn't come until the next day, Joe, so that was my excuse for not being there. It had nothing to do with the storm. Now, I always ask you this question, of course. Have you another book in mind?
Yes, but I have a different style of writing in mind too, so it's going to take a lot longer. And I'm actually working on a short story which may well become a novel. It's very complicated and needs a lot of research.
And do you enjoy writing now? Obviously you do.
I do, yes, but I'm not very disciplined, so I get distracted very easily. But you really, if you're going to write, you really have to discipline yourself, set times, even if you're not going to write anything. Just sit there and think on a regular basis. And I'm not very good at that.
And how many poems are in there in Rossetti's Wombat?
100 poems.
That's a lot of poems. Will you read another one for us before we say goodbye?
Sure, yes. Can I read this poem, Blank Canvas, because we have a lot of art exhibitions at the moment, and this is about art. Blank Canvas. The hardest thing, I always think, is making that first move, seizing the moment of the mood, for blank stands the canvas, yearning for the beat of colour, that signal of intent. Imagine you're behind a microphone and must sing that opening phrase, unrehearsed, or slide into the trombone blow. But then you know it can only be in blue. So you stand at the crossroads, palette winking paint. Every wodge represents a go. Now dare you be a Daniel? Go on, improvise, extemporize. Oh, just get on with it. Aim the gun and shoot. With that first precision dab you make your mark. Select your ground. All things stem from that one shape. Now, burdened with destiny, that little dot of paint is a challenge to the pristine whiteness, urging its response. But this attack is just too tentative, too subdued, and then you see in your mind's eye how other artists painted with such relish. How then to emulate the lunge and plunge of Pollock, or slash and parry of other paintbrush swordsmen? No, re-begin with swash and buckle gusto, shouting now, take that, you snivelling canvas, splash into the turpentine, wallop into the globs of paint, frantic flourish on the palette, and then fierce stabs of colour on the wretched cowering surface. The spell is broken. Sickly inhibitions roll away. You grab the biggest brush and fall upon the easel with a blind and berserk fury. Breathless, you stop to view the carnival of carnage, to inspect your desecration. But now a new, more subtle force has come upon you. This won't do, you say. Change gear, select another mood. More serene, call it indigo. Picasso would have approved. So you slop and prod with bristle brush, and shapes take form like burnt sienna blushings you may see in the fresh-cut section of a tree. Then your mind begins to wander, straying into strange places like... Why do women hug cushions? I tried once and felt a fool, so I placed it behind my head and slept instead. Now the moving, moody brush has fashioned you a smiling face, a young girl, you think. Your Mona Lisa, who just knows that bilateral symmetry is so boring.
Absolutely brilliant, John Neal, and that's in Rossetti's Wombat, which is endorsed, I see, by Owen Colfer and also by my former editor of many years, Tom Mooney. So they'll like it, and they're telling people they should go out and buy it and read it.
Yes.
And I will say the same thing.
Thank you, Dan.
And of course, on Thursday, the 25th of October, you're in the library in Enniscorthy at 7 p.m. and you want people to go along and enjoy it.
I'd love them to. Thank you very
John
much.
Neal, congratulations, and thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much.